Hi, my name is Roy Robson, and I'm a professor of history here at the University of the Sciences. And it's kind of a funny place to be a historian in some ways because here I am at this university that is dedicated to health science, to pharmacy, to physical therapy, and to the hard sciences. But one of the very cool things about doing this, about being a historian at a place like this, is that it opens my eyes to new things to study about. So when I was being trained as a historian, I learned about European history, I learned about Russian history, that was my first specialty, and I learned a lot about social history, religious history, that sort of thing. And then I got to the University of the Sciences, and I got really interested in the relationship of scientific ideas to humanistic ideas. And to make a long story short, I ended up teaching this course on time. So what we're going to be doing in this class is looking at time from lots of different perspectives. And I often tell my students it's the only class you're going to enter knowing more than you left. And the reason for that is that all of us have some idea, some feeling for what time is, how time feels, how we experience time. But the more you think about it, the more you realize you don't really know. And what that means is we can spend some time, if you will, for the joke, looking at time from the perspective of religion and from art and from science and from social sciences. And I think by the end of this course, you too will have this feeling that time is a much richer and deeper and wider and broader idea than you ever thought about before. But at the same time, you'll have a feeling that you can analyze and think about and consider time in a lot of different ways. So the first problem, I think, when we're thinking about time is considering the question of how we know what we know, right? I could bore you, as I do with other students, with lots of really bad lyrics to really bad classic rock songs about time. I'll try not to do that, even though it might slip in once in a while. But the truth is, we learn about time in lots of ways, right? We can learn about it from listening to classical rock on the radio. We can learn about it by reading. We can learn about it by experience. We can learn about it by feeling, right? When you're watching something really exciting, time seems to move quickly. When you're watching something that is not very exciting, it seems to drag out for a very long time. I often tell my students at 8 o'clock that the class from 8 o'clock to 9:15 might feel like it's actually 4 hours long because it's not that fun. They claim that that's not true, but we'll see. So we can understand time by feeling, by intellectual ideas, by rational ideas, by instinct. There's wonderful research being done on how animals understand time, for example. There's memory, which of course is related to time. There's sensory knowledge. If we're feeling it, if we're touching it, if we can feel the sun moving on our face when you're lying on the beach, that in some ways is a sensory way to think about time. We could even think about given knowledge, what somebody has told us is true, or we can use something like gnosis, the idea of a secret knowledge that only a few people learn about, and then they pass that down secretly. I don't have any gnosis for you. I don't have any secret knowledge. But I think we can think about all of those forms of knowledge when we're trying to study time, when we're trying to experience time, trying to understand time. In the last segment, I introduced this idea of understanding time in many different ways, understanding it from the point of view of religion, or from the point of view of our senses, or from the point of view of science, or from literature. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit more and also give you a little structure for, I hope, how this course will go. The first part of the course is going to be looking at how different cultures have traditionally understood time. And we're going to be looking at Hinduism, we'll look at Buddhism, and then we'll be looking at the Abrahamic traditions, so Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And by focusing first on these different kinds of religious and cultural traditions, we'll be able to understand a little bit about how different people in different places and at different times experienced and understood time. And what this gives us then is the ability to sort of step out of ourselves, no matter what tradition we're from, and say, wow, people think about it this way, Or, gee, I never thought about it that way before. And I know for students that are live at the University of Sciences, this is often the most fun part of the class because it is completely new, totally new ideas, perceptions, words that you've never heard of before. That means, however, things can get very, very confusing very quickly. That's okay. It's not bad to be confused when you're trying to work through a difficult question. But speaking of questions, it seems to me that one way to get at the material that we're going to be studying is to ask the same questions to each culture, to each set of texts, to each religion, to each artwork. And there could be many, many different questions that we use when we're thinking about time. But what I'd like to do is offer 4 that I think work very well. The first is, what is the structure of time? Does time move in a line? Does time move in a spiral? Is time a big block of cheese, or is it a loaf of bread? Question 2, the great human question. Can we predict the future? Can we do something that will predict what's going to happen? Will the wide receiver get that ball? Will the ball fly out of the park? Will X person or Y person win the election? What's going to happen to the market? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Imagine if we could predict those things. Because if we can predict them, then the third question comes in, can we control the future? And different places, different times, different religions, different people have different ideas about the future. Can we control it or not? And then the fourth question is in some ways the most bizarre of them because it's not the way most of us think about time. The fourth question asks, do humans experience time externally, internally, or both? So here's what I mean. External time we can think of as chronological time, the time on the clock, the time on the calendar. Internal time is a very different idea. It might be called ontological time, time in our bodies. Is there an internal feeling for time? Do we have an internal clock? Do we have many internal clocks? So the question is time external, chronological? Is it internal, ontological? Or is it both? So that last question is an odd one, but I think we'll find it very useful. Just to recap, 4 questions that we'll try to use throughout this course. What is the structure of time? Can humans predict the future? Can humans control the future? And do humans experience time externally, internally, or both?